The dying alien gasped for breath, her purple skin turning a sickening blue, as she desperately clawed at the Earth's atmosphere, unable to process the oxygen-rich air that sustained the human race. Patrick Bryant witnessed the scene unfold on the monitor, his eyes fixed on the writhing extraterrestrial as he performed routine maintenance on the life support systems of the HSS Endeavour. The ship hummed around him, a testament to human ingenuity and resilience in the face of the Norcadian Empire's relentless onslaught. Earth had been caught off guard by the sudden invasion, the Norcadian ships darkening the skies and unleashing devastation upon the planet's surface. Humanity fought back with every weapon at their disposal, but it soon became clear that the Norcadians sought something far more vital than mere conquest: Earth's oxygen. The aliens, despite their advanced technology and fearsome appearance, were utterly dependent on their complex life support systems to survive in Earth's atmosphere. They envied the humans' ability to breathe the rich, life-giving air that permeated every corner of the planet. As the battle raged on, Patrick and his fellow engineers worked tirelessly to maintain the Endeavour's systems, knowing that the ship represented humanity's last hope for survival. The stolen Norcadian technology, now in the hands of human rebels, could be the key to turning the tide of the war and securing Earth's future. But as Patrick prepared to embark on the mission to retrieve the device, he couldn't shake the feeling that the true nature of the conflict was yet to be revealed. The fate of two species hung in the balance, and the secrets buried deep within the Norcadian Empire threatened to unravel the very fabric of the universe itself. The Endeavour raced through the inky blackness of space, its engines roaring as it sped towards the attacked Norcadian research station. Patrick's heart pounded in his chest as he and Quasar suited up in the armory, preparing for the mission ahead. He checked his oxygen tanks, ensuring they were full, and secured his helmet with a soft hiss as it locked into place. Quasar, meanwhile, donned his specialized breathing apparatus, a complex system of tubes and filters designed to remove the deadly oxygen from the air he breathed. The ship shuddered as it docked with the station, the airlock sealing with a metallic clang. Patrick and Quasar led a team of Norcadian soldiers onto the eerily quiet facility, their footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. The walls were scorched with energy weapon fire, and debris littered the floor, crunching beneath their boots. As they ventured deeper into the station, Patrick's eyes narrowed as he spotted a trail of dark red blood leading towards the main research lab. He signaled to Quasar, and they approached the lab's entrance with caution, weapons at the ready. The doors slid open, revealing a group of human rebels, their faces hardened with determination and their weapons trained on the Norcadian team. The rebel leader, a grizzled veteran with a deep scar across his face, stepped forward, his eyes locked on Quasar. "You may have taken our planet, but you'll never take our spirit," he growled, his voice rough with anger. "We know your weakness, Norcadian. We know you can't breathe our air." With a quick motion, the rebel leader pulled a canister from his belt and hurled it towards Quasar. Patrick's eyes widened as he realized the danger, and he leaped forward, snatching the canister out of the air before it could reach the Norcadian commander. The rebels opened fire, energy bolts sizzling through the air as Patrick and Quasar dove for cover. They fought back, their training and experience guiding their movements as they took down the rebels one by one. The battle was fierce and close quarters, the cramped confines of the research lab making every shot count. As the last rebel fell, Patrick examined the canister in his hand, his brow furrowing as he realized it contained pure oxygen. He looked up at Quasar, who was panting heavily through his breathing apparatus, and the pieces fell into place. The Norcadians weren't just invading Earth for its resources, they needed the oxygen-rich atmosphere to survive. Quasar's eyes were wide as he stared at a computer screen, the stolen research data scrolling across the display. "This changes everything," he whispered, his voice tinged with a mix of fear and awe. Patrick leans in close to the glowing display, eyes scanning rapidly over the troves of stolen Norcadian data. Images, reports, and complex biological schematics flash across the screen. The information painted a startling picture. The Norcadians had been collecting human specimens and studying them for years, all to crack the code of how humans could breathe oxygen unassisted. One document detailed the aliens' attempts at genetic manipulation, splicing Norcadian and human DNA in a bid to create a hybrid capable of surviving in both species' atmospheric conditions. Patrick's mind reels at the implications, but a blaring alarm from Quasar's communicator derails his racing thoughts. Norcadian Command knows we're here. They're sending backup to purge the station. We need to evacuate immediately, Quasar barks, already moving towards the exit. Patrick falls in behind the commander, joined by the remnants of the Norcadian strike team as they dash through the winding corridors back to the airlock. But the rebels had prepared for this moment. A hail of energy fire rains down on the retreating Norcadians as the humans spring their ambush. Quasar and his soldiers return fire, their weapons flaring in the dimly lit hallway. In the chaos and smoke, Patrick loses sight of his allies. A searing bolt of plasma slams into the wall mere inches from his head, driving him to seek cover. Alone, pulse pounding in his ears, Patrick hears the heavy tread of rebel boots echoing off the metal floors. He slips through the nearest door, engaging the lock with trembling fingers. Leaning against the sealed portal, Patrick gulps down lungfuls of air, trying to calm his fraying nerves. As his breathing steadies, Patrick takes stock of his new surroundings. The room was some kind of research lab, filled with burbling tanks, gleaming chrome instruments, and walls lined with secured refrigerators. A thick folder stamped with Project Prometheus rests on a nearby workstation, drawing Patrick's attention like a moth to the flame. With shaking hands, he flips open the cover and begins poring over the contents. Each page revealed new horrors, detailed accounts of humans being vivisected, organs analyzed and blood samples scrutinized. The Norcadians had been butchering humans, all in an attempt to steal the secrets of their superior respiratory system. Bile rises in Patrick's throat as he imagines the suffering endured by the unwilling test subjects. A heavy thud against the lab door snaps Patrick out of his dark reverie. He could hear the rebels just outside, attempting to force their way in. Steeling his resolve, Patrick shoves the damning evidence into his pack. The information had to make it back to the Endeavour at any cost. Humanity needed to know the truth behind the Norcadian invasion. With a steadying breath, Patrick readies his weapon and faces the door. The lab door exploded outward, ripped from its hinges by Patrick's armored boot. The bewildered rebels had no time to react as Patrick lunged forward, a blur of speed and precision. He slammed his rifle butt into the first soldier's faceplate, shattering the glass steel and sending the man crumpling to the deck. The second rebel raised his weapon, but Patrick was already inside his guard, striking pressure points with lightning-fast jabs. The rebel went limp like a puppet with cut strings. Patrick sprinted down the corridor, one hand pressed to his helmet's comlink. "Quasar, do you read? I found something. The Norcadians. They've been experimenting on humans, dissecting them, trying to steal our ability to breathe oxygen." Quasar's voice crackled with static and barely restrained rage. "Those bastards! Rendezvous at Junction Delta 5. We need to get this intel back to the Endeavour." At the junction, Quasar paced like a caged animal, his eyes haunted. "I knew Command was hiding something from me, but this is monstrous. We have to expose the truth." The clank of metal boots echoed down the hall. A phalanx of Norcadian soldiers rounded the corner, led by a gaunt officer with cruel eyes, Commander Zorgon. "You have something that belongs to us, human," Zorgon sneered. "Hand over the data. It's vital to our glorious purpose." Patrick glared back defiantly. "Your glorious purpose? You mean butchering innocent humans?" Zorgon's face contorted with rage. "Open fire." Plasma bolts stitched the air as Patrick and Quasar dove behind cargo containers. Scorched metal filled Patrick's nostrils as he returned fire, but the containers wouldn't hold forever against the relentless barrage. Patrick's gaze darted around the junction, searching for an edge. There, a weakened bulkhead. "Quasar, cover me." Patrick vaulted over the crate and charged towards the control panel, zigzagging to dodge the deadly energy beams. His fingers flew over the interface. Praying this gamble would pay off, he initiated the emergency decompression. Klaxons screamed their warning as blast doors slammed shut across the station. The shriek of escaping atmosphere drowned out the surprised shouts of Zorgon's troops. A howling wind ripped through the junction, sending soldiers tumbling and equipment crashing against the walls. "Move!" Patrick shouted over the maelstrom. He and Quasar fought their way through the chaos, their guns barking. Zorgon's men were scattered and disoriented, easy pickings. The Endeavour loomed ahead, a beautiful sight. Patrick's heart pounded as the airlock cycled open painfully slowly. He and Quasar stumbled aboard, slamming the hatch controls. The ship shuddered as the docking clamps released. The engines roared to life, pushing them away from the disintegrating station. As the adrenaline ebbed, Patrick slumped against the wall, his mind reeling. The Norcadians' dark secret could shatter the very foundations of the war, but he knew with grim certainty that they would never let that happen. The stolen data had painted a target on his back, and the Norcadians would be coming for blood. Patrick's fingers danced across the command center's holographic displays, his brow furrowed in concentration as he pored over the stolen Norcadian research data. Quasar stood at his side, the alien's breathing apparatus hissing softly with each inhale. "I've got something," Patrick said, his voice tight with tension. He tapped a series of commands and a three-dimensional schematic of a massive industrial complex sprang to life above the console. The Norcadians have been building a secret oxygen extraction facility on a remote planet called Zephyrus Prime. Quasar leaned in, his eyes narrowing as he studied the schematic. Zephyrus Prime is a Class 3 oxygen-rich world on the fringes of Norcadian space, but this facility, it's enormous, far larger than anything we've seen before. Patrick nodded grimly. They're not just extracting oxygen, they're planning to convert the entire planet's atmosphere into a breathable gas mixture for Norcadians. It'll give them a virtually unlimited supply. But the process will render the atmosphere toxic to all other species, Quasar said, his voice tinged with horror. If they succeed, they'll have the power to control the oxygen supply for the entire galaxy. Patrick's hands clenched into fists at his sides. "We have to stop them. We have to destroy that facility before it comes online." Quasar hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I agree, my people have gone too far. I can't stand by and watch them commit this atrocity." The two of them bent over the console, studying the facility's defenses and searching for weaknesses they could exploit. As they worked, Patrick glanced at Quasar out of the corner of his eye, marveling at the Norcadians' bravery. He was risking everything to help a species his own kind had been at war with for generations. Suddenly the command center shuddered violently, throwing Patrick and Quasar off balance. Alarms blared as the ship's AI announced, "Warning, hull breach detected. Norcadian warship has engaged. Shields at 60%. "Zahn," Quasar growled. "He's come for the data." Patrick was already moving, sprinting towards the armory with Quasar hot on his heels. He snatched a pulse rifle from the weapons rack and grabbed a set of oxygen tanks, slinging them over his shoulder. Quasar donned his specialized breathing apparatus and hefted a Norcadian plasma cannon, the weapon humming to life in his hands. Together they raced towards the airlock, the deck bucking beneath their feet as the Endeavour traded fire with the Norcadian warship. The outer doors hissed open, revealing the blackness of space and the looming hulk of the enemy vessel. Patrick took a deep breath of the Endeavour's recycled air, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew that the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. If they failed, the Norcadians would have the power to enslave every species in the known universe. But he pushed that thought aside. He had a job to do, a mission to complete, and he would see it through to the end no matter the cost. With a final nod to Quasar, Patrick stepped through the airlock and into the void, ready to take the fight to the Norcadians. The airlock doors hissed open, spilling Patrick and Quasar into the Norcadian warship's dark, cramped corridor. Pulse rifle at the ready, Patrick scanned for targets as Quasar activated his helmet's thermal imaging. Red silhouettes flared to life, Norcadian soldiers rushing to intercept the borders. "Contact left!" Quasar barked, swinging his plasma cannon towards the threat. A burst of searing blue energy ripped through the narrow passageway, the superheated gas igniting the air. Norcadian soldiers screamed as their armor melted, flesh bubbling and sloughing from bone. Patrick surged forward, deftly sidestepping a floating corpse. The ship's artificial gravity had been damaged in the firefight, and now every movement sent him drifting in unexpected directions. He compensated with short, controlled bursts from his suit's thrusters, years of zero-G training keeping him oriented. An Orcadian soldier careened around the corner, rifle spitting plasma. Patrick twisted, narrowly avoiding the deadly bolts. He returned fire, his pulse rounds stitching a line across the soldier's chest. The Norcadian convulsed, globules of blood drifting lazily in the low gravity. Deeper they pushed into the warship's bowels, Quasar's cannon roaring and Patrick's rifle barking. Norcadian resistance intensified with every meter gained, but the boarders were relentless. Bulkheads dented and scorched under the onslaught, the air choked with drifting debris and the stench of burnt metal. As they battled towards the ship's brig, Patrick's thoughts raced. Intel had placed human prisoners aboard this vessel, captives the Norcadians had taken in their raids on Earth's colonies. If he could free them, gather intel on the enemy's plans. A familiar face stopped him cold. Dr. Elena Sorensen, the brilliant xenobiologist who'd vanished months ago during a deep space expedition. She drifted in a makeshift cell, her once vibrant eyes dull and haunted. "Quasar, cover me," Patrick called, already working on the cell's locking mechanism. Sparks flew as he shorted the circuits, the bars sliding open with a groan. Dr. Sorensen clutched his arm, her fingers digging into his suit. "You're human," she whispered, voice ragged. "Please, you have to stop them. The Norcadians, they're planning—" A plasma bolt sizzled over their heads, forcing them to duck. Quasar had engaged a fresh wave of soldiers, his cannon's barrel glowing cherry red. "It's no time," Patrick snapped, dragging Dr. Sorensen towards the other cells. "We're getting you out of here." One by one, the cells disgorged their battered occupants, scientists, civilians, soldiers, all taken by the Norcadians, subjected to God knew what tortures. Patrick herded them into a tight knot, his rifle sweeping the smoky corridor. "Quasar," he shouted over the din of battle. "We need a route to the computer core. Dr. Sorensen says she has intel on the Norcadians' plans." The Norcadian soldier nodded, his breath rasping through his respirator. "Deck 4, Section 7, I'll clear a path." And clear a path he did. Quasar was a force of nature, his cannon spewing destruction as he charged through the warship's guts. Patrick and the prisoners followed in his wake, picking off stragglers and watching their rear. The computer core was a gleaming cylinder studded with access ports and pulsing with energy. Dr. Sorensen stumbled to the nearest terminal, her fingers flying over the keys. "It's worse than we thought," she said, her voice tight with tension. "The oxygen extraction facility, it's just the beginning. They're planning to colonize entire worlds, terraform them for Norcadian physiology." Patrick felt his blood run cold. An empire spanning the stars, all under Norcadian control, countless species enslaved or exterminated, all to feed the conqueror's insatiable hunger for oxygen. "We have to stop them," he growled, slamming a data drive into the terminal. "Download everything you can. We'll take it back to the Endeavour. Plan our next move." Dr. Sorensen worked frantically, sweat beading her brow. The data flowed into the drive, petabytes of stolen secrets and nefarious plans. But their time was running out. "Incoming!" Quasar roared from the core's entrance. He'd sealed the blast doors, but the Norcadians were already cutting through. The metal glowed molten red, sparks cascading to the deck. Patrick turned to the prisoners, his expression grim. "Stay behind me. When I give the word, run for the airlock. Don't look back." The doors exploded inward, revealing a squad of heavily armed Norcadians led by a towering figure in ornate armor. Captain Zahn, the warship's master, and a feared tactician. "Surrender the data, human," Zahn sneered, his voice a metallic rasp. "And the prisoners, you're outnumbered and outgunned." Patrick smiled coldly. "I don't think so." In a blur of motion, he primed a flashbang grenade and hurled it at the Norcadians. The device detonated with a skull-splitting crack, filling the air with blinding white light. "Go!" Patrick roared, shoving Dr. Sorensen and the others towards the airlock. He and Quasar laid down a blistering hail of covering fire, pulse rounds and plasma bolts ripping into the disoriented Norcadians. They ran, leaping over bodies and blasted debris, the warship shuddering around them. Alarms blared and energy conduits ruptured, venting geysers of crackling plasma. The airlock loomed ahead, a promise of salvation. Patrick slapped the cycle controls, the heavy doors grinding open. Dr. Sorensen and the prisoners scrambled through, followed by Quasar, Patrick diving after them just as a plasma bolt seared the air where he'd been standing. The airlock sealed with a resounding clang. Patrick sagged against the bulkhead, his heart pounding. They'd done it. They'd rescued the prisoners and stolen the Norcadians' secrets. But the fight was far from over. Back aboard the Endeavour, Patrick and Quasar stood before Captain Mikhail Petrov, the grizzled veteran's face lined with concern as he reviewed the stolen data. "This is worse than we feared," Petrov rumbled, his accent thick. "The Norcadians won't stop until they control every oxygen-producing world in the galaxy. Billions will suffer under their rule." Patrick nodded grimly. "We have to hit that extraction facility, sir. Destroy it before they can ramp up production." Petrov stroked his beard, his eyes hard. "Agreed, I'm setting course for the facility's coordinates. We'll brief the crew en route." As the Endeavour prepared for the jump to light speed, Patrick found himself standing before a viewport, staring out at the infinite expanse of stars. The weight of the coming battle settled on his shoulders, a burden he hadn't asked for, but couldn't refuse. Quasar settled beside him, the alien's presence a comforting anchor. "You humans," he said softly, "you never give up, do you? Even when the odds are stacked against you." Patrick shrugged. "We're stubborn like that, and we don't take kindly to bullies trying to steal our air." Quasar chuckled, a raspy sound through his respirator. "Glad you're on our side, Patrick Bryant. Together we might just have a chance of stopping this madness." The stars stretched into glowing lines as the Endeavour leapt into hyperspace, racing towards a confrontation that would decide the fate of the galaxy. Patrick clenched his fists, feeling the weight of his pulse rifle across his back. Whatever came next, he would face it head-on, fighting for the freedom of every species, no matter the cost. Patrick and Quasar stood in the Endeavour's armory, suiting up for their most dangerous mission yet. Patrick checked his oxygen tanks, ensuring they were full, and secured his helmet with a hiss. Quasar donned his specialized breathing apparatus, the complex system of tubes and filters allowing him to breathe in the planet's oxygen-rich atmosphere. In the hangar bay, the strike team boarded a sleek, black stealth shuttle. Patrick and Quasar took their seats, the tension palpable as the shuttle launched into space. Using the stolen Norcadian data, they plotted a course to the planet's surface, avoiding the enemy's detection systems. As they descended through the atmosphere, Patrick caught his first glimpse of the oxygen extraction facility. Massive pipes and storage tanks rose from the ground, clouds of swirling gases obscuring their view. The Norcadians were working quickly, their machinery already humming with activity. The shuttle touched down in a secluded valley, and the strike team disembarked. Patrick and Quasar took point, leading the way towards the facility's perimeter. They moved silently, using the terrain for cover as they approached the towering walls. With a nod, Patrick signaled the team to split up. He and Quasar would infiltrate the heart of the facility, while the others planted charges at key structural points. They had to buy Dr. Sorensen time to find a way to reverse the extraction process and save the planet's atmosphere. Patrick and Quasar breached the facility's outer defenses, their weapons flaring as they engaged the Norcadian guards. They fought their way deeper into the complex, planting explosive charges as they went. The corridors were narrow and dimly lit, the air thick with the hum of machinery. As they reached the main control room, the doors slid open to reveal a towering figure waiting for them. Commander Zorgon stood before them, encased in a powerful exoskeleton, a devastating plasma cannon in his hands. His eyes burned with hatred as he recognized Patrick and Quasar. You think you can stop us? Zorgan sneered. You're too late. The extraction process is nearly complete. This planet's atmosphere will soon belong to the Norcadian Empire. Patrick and Quasar opened fire, their weapons pulsing with energy. Zorgon's exoskeleton absorbed the blows, and he returned fire with a barrage of plasma bolts. The room erupted into chaos, consoles exploding and debris raining down on them. They fought with every trick in their arsenal, dodging and weaving as they tried to find a weakness in Zorgon's defenses. Patrick spotted a side chamber filled with volatile gas canisters. With a shout, he lured Zorgon into the room, firing his weapon at the canisters. The explosion was deafening, a wall of flames engulfing Zorgon and his elite guard. Patrick barely managed to escape the blast, his armor singed and his oxygen tanks running low. He stumbled back into the control room, where Quasar was already inputting the final detonation sequence. But as they turned to leave, they found their path blocked by a group of Norcadian reinforcements. The soldiers poured into the room, their weapons trained on Patrick and Quasar. Outnumbered and outgunned, they prepared to make their final stand. Just as the Norcadians were about to overwhelm them, a massive explosion rocked the facility. The charges had detonated, and the oxygen extraction equipment was going up in flames. Patrick and Quasar seized the moment, fighting their way through the confusion and chaos. They ran through the crumbling corridors, dodging falling debris and collapsing walkways. The facility was coming apart around them, the Norcadians' screams echoing in their ears. With a final burst of speed, they emerged from the destruction, stumbling into the open air. Above them, a fleet of Earth Defense Force ships descended from orbit, their weapons blazing as they engaged the Norcadian forces. The enemy was quickly overwhelmed, their defenses crumbling under the onslaught. The oxygen extraction facility was reduced to rubble, the planet's atmosphere safe once more. As Patrick and Quasar caught their breath, they saw Dr. Sorensen emerging from a nearby shuttle. She held a device in her hands, a triumphant smile on her face. "It worked," she said. "The planet's atmosphere is already starting to recover. We did it." The cheers of the Endeavour's crew echoed through the ship as Patrick and Quasar stepped onto the bridge, the weight of their victory still sinking in. Captain Petrov greeted them with a firm handshake, his eyes shining with pride. "You've done the impossible," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. "The Norcadian threat has been dealt a serious blow, and it's all thanks to you." Patrick opened his mouth to respond, but was cut off by the sudden blare of an alarm. The crew scrambled to their stations as a holographic display flickered to life in the center of the bridge. "Incoming transmission from Earth Defense Force Command," the ship's AI announced, its voice calm and measured. The image resolved into the face of Admiral Ivanova, her features etched with worry. "Captain Petrov, we have a situation. The Norcadians have launched a massive counterattack across the galaxy. They're targeting our key colonies and outposts." Petrov leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "What are our orders, Admiral?" "The Endeavour is to lead a task force to the planet Arcadia. Our intelligence suggests that the Norcadians will strike there next. You must defend the human settlement at all costs." Patrick felt a chill run down his spine. Arcadia was a thriving colony, home to millions of innocent civilians. The thought of the Norcadians attacking such a target filled him with dread. The Endeavour surged through hyperspace, its engines thrumming with power. Patrick stood on the observation deck, watching the stars streak past in a blur of light. Quasar joined him, his breathing apparatus hissing softly. "I never thought I'd see the day when my own people would turn on the innocent," Quasar said, his voice tinged with sorrow. "We've become the very thing we once fought against." Patrick placed a hand on the Norcadian's shoulder. "We'll stop them, Quasar, we have to." As the task force emerged from hyperspace, the sight that greeted them was one of pure chaos. Norcadian warships filled the skies above Arcadia, their plasma cannons raining destruction down on the settlement below. Dropships disgorged hordes of soldiers onto the planet's surface, their weapons blazing. Patrick and Quasar led the ground assault, fighting their way through the war-torn streets. The sound of gunfire and explosions filled the air, mingling with the screams of the wounded and dying. They pushed forward, building by building, street by street. Norcadian soldiers fell before their relentless advance, but the enemy seemed to have no end. For every one they cut down, 2 more took their place. As they neared the center of the settlement, Patrick's heart stopped. A school, its walls crumbling and its windows shattered, loomed before them. The thought of children trapped inside, caught in the crossfire, was too much to bear. Without hesitation, Patrick charged forward, Quasar hot on his heels. They fought their way into the ruined building, dodging falling debris and plasma bolts. Inside, they found a group of terrified children huddled in a corner, their eyes wide with fear. "It's okay," Patrick said softly, kneeling down to their level. "We're here to help." He gathered the children close, shielding them with his body as he led them out of the school. But as they emerged into the sunlight, they found themselves face to face with a Norcadian soldier. The soldier raised his weapon, but then hesitated. Slowly he reached up and removed his helmet, revealing a face that Patrick recognized all too well. "Zahn?" he whispered, hardly daring to believe his eyes. The Norcadian captain nodded, his expression grim. "Patrick Bryant, I never thought I'd see you again." Patrick tensed, ready for a fight, but Zahn surprised him by lowering his weapon. "I've seen the truth of what my people have become," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "The atrocities we've committed, the innocent lives we've destroyed. I can't be a part of it anymore." He looked at Patrick, his eyes pleading. "I want to help you. I want to make things right." Patrick hesitated, torn between his instincts and his desire to believe in the good in others. But before he could respond, a plasma bolt sizzled through the air, heading straight for the children. Zahn moved with lightning speed, throwing himself in front of the bolt. It struck him square in the chest, sending him sprawling to the ground. Patrick rushed to his side, cradling the Norcadian's head in his lap. Zahn coughed, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. "Take care of them," he whispered, his voice fading. "Take care of your people, and know that not all Norcadians are your enemy." With those final words, Zahn breathed his last. Patrick bowed his head, tears stinging his eyes. In that moment, he knew that Zahn had been right. There was still hope for peace between their species, if only they could find a way to work together. With renewed determination, Patrick led the children to safety. Zahn's sacrifice had bought them the time they needed to turn the tide of the battle. The human task force pushed back against the Norcadian invaders, driving them from the settlement and back into the skies. But the cost had been high. Many human soldiers and civilians lay dead in the streets, their lives cut short by the senseless violence. As the dust settled, Patrick and Quasar received a message from Earth Defense Force Command. The Norcadian Empire had declared all-out war on humanity, vowing to exterminate every last human in the galaxy. The Endeavour was ordered to return to Earth, to join the fight in the final showdown. Patrick looked out at the stars, his heart heavy with the weight of what was to come. He knew that the fate of humanity hung in the balance, that he and his fellow soldiers would have to give everything they had to defend their home and their way of life. But he also knew that there was still hope, hope for peace, hope for understanding, hope that one day humans and Norcadians could put aside their differences and build a better future together. The memory of Zahn's sacrifice burned bright in Patrick's mind as the Endeavour raced through the void, Earth growing larger with each passing moment. He would not let that sacrifice be in vain. He would fight, and he would win. For Zahn, for the children of Arcadia, and for all the innocent lives caught in the crossfire of a war they never asked for. As the Endeavour dropped out of hyperspace, the chaos of battle filled the viewports. Norcadian warships swarmed like angry hornets around the blue-green jewel of Earth, exchanging fire with the beleaguered Earth Defense Force fleet. Patrick gripped the handrail as the ship shuddered under a barrage of plasma fire. Quasar stood beside him, his face grim beneath his breathing apparatus. "We're being hailed by Admiral Ivanova," the comm officer reported, her voice tense. The Norcadians have launched a full-scale assault. EDF forces are barely holding the line. Captain Petrov leaned forward in his chair, his jaw set. Put the Admiral through. Ivanova's image flickered to life on the view screen, static, distorting her features. Captain Petrov, I have a critical mission for your crew. We've identified the Norcadian flagship. Intelligence believes Emperor Zoltar himself is aboard. Patrick felt a surge of adrenaline. Zoltar, the mastermind behind the Norcadians' campaign of conquest, if they could capture him. I need your best soldiers to infiltrate that ship and apprehend Zoltar, Ivanova continued. Ending this war may hinge on bringing him in alive. Petrov nodded grimly. Understood, Admiral. We'll get it done. As the transmission ended, Petrov turned to Patrick and Quasar. Assemble a team, the best of the best. Human, Norcadian, whatever species can get the job done. You'll take a stealth shuttle, slip past their defenses, and board that flagship. Patrick saluted, his heart pounding. Yes, sir. In the armory, Patrick and Quasar handpicked their strike team. Humans like Sergeant Ava Novak, a crack shot with nerves of steel. Norcadian defectors fiercely loyal to Quasar. A hulking Kronax mercenary named Thrax, his scales battle-scarred. They armed themselves with the deadliest weapons Earth and the Norcadian resistance could provide. Plasma rifles, neurotoxin grenades, monomolecular blades. Patrick checked and rechecked his gear with practiced efficiency, his mind focused on the mission ahead. In the shuttle bay, the strike team boarded a sleek, matte-black craft bristling with stealth tech. As the Endeavour swooped and dodged through the battle raging around Earth, the shuttle detached, gliding silently towards the Norcadian flagship. Approaching target, the pilot murmured, hands dancing over the controls. Docking now. The shuttle shuddered as it locked onto the flagship's hull. Patrick felt the familiar rush of pre-mission jitters, his grip tightening on his rifle. Breaching in 3, 2, 1. The airlock blew open with a concussive blast. Patrick charged through the smoke, Quasar at his side, the strike team fanning out behind them. Alarms blared as startled Norcadian crewmen scrambled for their weapons. Plasma bolts crisscrossed the corridor, searing the bulkheads. Patrick dropped a Norcadian soldier with a double tap to the chest, pivoting to fire on another. Quasar's cannon roared, scything down a trio of enemies. They fought their way deeper into the ship, the resistance growing fiercer with each meter gained. Norcadian Marines in heavy power armor stomped into view, energy shields shimmering. Thrax bellowed a war cry and charged, massive fists pulverizing armor and bone. At a sealed blast door, Sergeant Novak crouched and primed a breaching charge. The shaped explosion ripped through the reinforced metal, revealing the bridge beyond. Patrick tossed in a flash grenade, the searing white burst leaving the Norcadians reeling. And there, rising from a throne-like command chair, was Emperor Zoltar himself. His ornate armor gleamed in the smoke-choked light, a crackling energy sword igniting in his clawed hand. Pitiful mammals, Zoltar sneered, his voice a guttural rasp. You dare challenge the might of the Norcadian Empire? Patrick raised his rifle, finger tightening on the trigger. It's over, Zoltar. Surrender and your people will be spared further bloodshed. Zoltar threw back his head and laughed, a harsh metallic sound. Spare me your mewling, please. Guards, annihilate these vermin. The Norcadian elite guard surged forward, energy blades flashing. Patrick and his team met them head-on, rifle fire and plasma bolts filling the air. Zoltar waded into the fray, his sword a blurring arc of destruction. Patrick found himself face to face with the Emperor, barely parrying a slash that would have decapitated him. He counterattacked with a spinning kick, his armored boot crashing against Zoltar's chestplate. The Norcadian staggered back, then lunged forward with a roar. His blade sliced through Patrick's rifle, missing his throat by a hair's breadth. Patrick dropped the sparking halves of his gun and drew his monomolecular knife, the razor-sharp edge gleaming. They dueled across the blood-slicked deck, blades clashing and sparking. Zoltar was fast, far faster than any Norcadian Patrick had faced before, but Patrick was driven by a righteous fury, a determination to end this war, once and for all. In a lightning-quick feint, Patrick slipped past Zoltar's guard and plunged his knife into the gap beneath the Emperor's helmet. Zoltar convulsed, ichor spraying from the wound. He toppled backwards, his sword clattering to the deck. Patrick stood over the fallen Emperor, chest heaving. Around him, the last of the Norcadian guards fell to the strike team's onslaught, but his moment of triumph was shattered by a cry of pain. Quasar slumped against a bulkhead, hands clutching a gaping wound in his side. Patrick raced to his friend's side, cradling him in his arms. "Hold on, Quasar," Patrick pleaded, fumbling for a medkit. "We'll get you patched up, get you back to the Endeavor." But Quasar shook his head weakly, blood bubbling from his lips. "No time," he rasped. "Need to tell you that you've been building an alliance. Other species, sick of Norcadian rule, planning to overthrow Zoltar." With a trembling hand, Quasar pressed a data chip into Patrick's palm. "Take this, all the information you'll need. Unite them. Finish what we started." Quasar's eyes flickered and went dull, his final breath rattling in his chest. Patrick bowed his head, tears stinging his eyes. His friend, his brother-in-arms, gone. But there was no time to grieve. Patrick pocketed the data chip and stood, facing his battered but victorious team. "Secure Zoltar. We're ending this now." The war was far from over, but with Zoltar in chains and an alliance waiting in the wings, Patrick finally dared to hope. Hope for victory, for peace. For a future where humans and aliens stood together, united against tyranny. As the Allied fleet descended upon the Norcadian homeworld, Patrick's heart raced with a mix of anticipation and dread. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and he knew that this final assault would determine the course of history. The strike team's dropship shuddered as it entered the planet's atmosphere, its hull glowing red from the friction. Patrick checked his weapons one last time, his fingers tightening around the grip of his pulse rifle. Beside him, the other members of the team did the same, their faces grim with determination. The dropship touched down on the outskirts of the capital city, its ramp lowering to reveal a scene of utter chaos. Norcadian soldiers swarmed the streets, their weapons firing at the advancing Allied forces. Explosions rocked the ground, sending plumes of dust and debris into the air. Patrick charged forward, his rifle spitting plasma bolts into the enemy ranks. He ducked and weaved through the rubble-strewn streets, his senses heightened to a razor's edge. The rest of the strike team followed close behind, their weapons adding to the cacophony of battle. They fought their way deeper into the city, taking out Norcadian strongpoints and automated defenses with ruthless efficiency. Patrick's armor was scorched and pitted from near misses, but he barely noticed the damage. All that mattered was reaching their objective, the Prime Minister's bunker. As they neared the heart of the city, Patrick's comms crackled to life. It was Dr. Sorensen, her voice urgent and strained. "Patrick, I've made a discovery," she said, her words nearly drowned out by the sounds of battle. "The Norcadians' oxygen weakness, it's not natural. It's the result of a genetic experiment gone wrong." Patrick's eyes widened as Dr. Sorensen explained her findings. Centuries ago, Norcadian scientists had attempted to enhance their species' resistance to oxygen, but instead had created a mutation that made them dependent on their specialized breathing apparatuses. Armed with this knowledge, Patrick led the strike team onwards, their resolve stronger than ever. They blasted their way into the Prime Minister's bunker, the reinforced doors crumpling under the onslaught of their weapons. Inside they found the Prime Minister, cowering behind a wall of heavily armed guards. Patrick stepped forward, his rifle leveled at the Norcadian leader's chest. "It's over," Patrick said, his voice hard and unyielding. "We know the truth about your people's origins. Surrender now, and this bloodshed can end." The Prime Minister's eyes flashed with a mixture of fear and defiance. He reached for a control panel on the wall, his hand hovering over a large, ominous button. "You may have won this battle, human," he spat, "but you will never defeat the Norcadian Empire. If we cannot rule the galaxy, then no one will." With a final manic laugh, the Prime Minister slammed his fist down on the button. Alarms blared throughout the bunker, and a computerized voice announced the activation of a doomsday device. Patrick watched in horror as the view screens showed the device. A massive machine buried deep beneath the planet's surface began to suck the oxygen out of the atmosphere. The Norcadian soldiers around him began to collapse, their breathing apparatuses failing as the air grew thin. The strike team raced to the device's control room, desperate to shut it down before it was too late. But as they arrived, they found themselves faced with a terrible choice. They could destroy the device, saving the planet and its inhabitants, or they could use it to permanently alter the Norcadians' genetic code, freeing them from their dependence on their breathing apparatuses, but fundamentally changing who they were as a species. Patrick's mind reeled with the weight of the decision. He thought of Quasar, his friend and ally, who had given his life to protect the innocent. He thought of Zahn, the Norcadian captain who had turned against his own people to fight for what was right. In the end, there was only one choice he could make. With a heavy heart, Patrick gave the order to destroy the device, knowing that it was the only way to prevent the Norcadians from ever threatening the galaxy again. As the device exploded in a blinding flash of light, the Norcadian Empire collapsed like a house of cards. The Allied forces swept through the capital, securing key locations and rounding up the remaining enemy soldiers. In the days that followed, Patrick was hailed as a hero by the people of Earth and the Allied worlds. But even as he stood before cheering crowds and accepted the accolades of grateful leaders, he couldn't shake the feeling of guilt that gnawed at his soul. He had saved countless lives, but at what cost? His actions had condemned an entire species to a slow extinction, their fate sealed by the destruction of the device that had been their only hope. Unable to bear the weight of his decision, Patrick resigned his commission and set out on a new mission. He would find a way to save the Norcadians from their fate, to undo the damage that had been done in the name of victory. As he boarded a ship bound for the far reaches of the galaxy, Patrick knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but he also knew that he had the strength, the courage, and the allies to see it through, no matter what challenges lay ahead. If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video, then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.